भगवान श्री योगी रामसूरतकुमार की सर्वं योगी रामसूरतकुमारार्पणमस्तु। We are absolutely thankful to Bhagwan for this gracious gesture of his, for the gift of grace that we could sing his beautiful, powerful Nama in the evening twilight, when all the gods would be engaged in worship, sending a huge current of divinity. Now, today also, we would go straight to Sannidhi Street House. Many people had seen it in its full glory, and newcomers have no idea how it looked. When you enter Sannidhi Street House, there's a veranda, a small one, L-shaped, and the long window, the long and wide window, which serves as a wall. You would see the whole window completely filled up with dry malas, so that people could not see inside. When you cross this small veranda, there's a huge wooden door, and then a very small passage, dark, because there's no window at all. Only if you open the door, the front door, there'll be some light. Now this passage leads to the inner hall, which served as Bhagwan's abode, Sri Vaikuntha, Kailash. For 17 years. When you enter it first time, you will be in a shock. The way things would be scattered all over the place. Things would seem chaotic, but there was a definite order in which Bhagwan had placed things. So much so, if somebody offered to do some cleaning, Bhagwan would scream, No, there is no need. Because we would disturb his cosmos. There would be a heap of cigarette boxes in one place, a heap of matchboxes in another place, and the newspapers all scattered around, and books, and dirty clothes turned black from brown hanging on the nails on the wall here and there. And so many odd pieces, like Pandora's box. And there is one heap of bottles, from the smallest to the biggest, all heaped up, carrying different offerings. And many of them had stayed as they were for a long time. And then there would be a mud pot and an aluminium vessel over which he would put his coconut shell. And above all, there would be 17 photographs of his own, and what's more, the same one, hanging next to each other all round. That was another shock for me the first time I'd been there. How could anybody hang his own photograph and the same photograph, and 17 of them? It was all madness, but soon enough I knew it was divine madness. And the whole place, the whole hall, the inner hall, served a tool in his hand, the abode. Sometimes it meant the whole of India. Many, many subtleties on the walls. On the one corner, you would see huge walls which would serve as a structure for protection, like you see in the fort, tall walls of stones. He had drawn it personally himself. He climbed on a stool and drew those pictures by his own hand. So on this corner, you see the compound wall, this tall compound wall, high walls, sound like a very protective walls. In the next corner, on the western side, you see once again the same type of drawing representing the high walls, which would serve as a shield of protection. The other two corners, the third corner, you would see one half of a bow joining with the other half of a bow, and then the arrow would not look like an arrow, it would look like a flag. And then the fourth one, waves of blue ocean. Such mystic drawings. Nobody knew what exactly they meant, but one could guess, considering, or at least people who knew, moved with him closely, could guess at something which could be very near the truth. Now, in the beginning, Bhagwan, behind which there are rooms, small rooms, 3 or 4 of them. In the earlier days, people could stay with him, and some friends had stayed in the back rooms. But in the late 80s and into the 90s, Bhagwan began to give darshan only in the small veranda, mostly. The first time I went there, I had the fortune of being taken inside straight into the hall. But many subsequent visits were done only in the outside small veranda. Now one day, during such darshan in that small veranda, there were people, about 8 or 9 of them, the opposite. Inside, I forgot to tell you, there used to be small mats, not very small, but mats torn here and there with huge holes, and so exposing the floor beneath. And there would be a lot of dust. He would have spread it there only for the visitors to be seated on that. There were more holes than mat. And then in the next bay, there would be gunny bags rolled, just 2 or 3 of them rolled into a bundle which served as his pillow. And one gunny bag spread on a cloth was his bed. Now, outside in the small veranda, there was a mat. Again, it was torn here and there. That was his simhasan, that was his throne. This emperor of the whole cosmos was comfortably seated, very majestically seated on the stone mat, and conducted his spiritual ministry. When I was seated there one day, there were many people on either side, and then Bhagwan asked me, Devaki, can you get a mango? Can you buy a mango? He used the word mango, since in English, mango represents both a ripe fruit and the unripe one. I assumed he meant a ripe mango fruit because he liked eating it. Immediately I rushed out and then looked here and there desperately, walking on and on. Mostly it was running because I knew he would expect us to finish it. You know, there was economy of time and we must do it efficiently. Economy and efficiency. So I was looking here and there, walking very fast, almost running my way, all the time watching the shops, hoping for the sight of a mango, and then ran into the market. I was very sure there should be at least one somewhere, because Bhagwan had mentioned it. Bhagwan would not mention anything that was not possible. So if something came out of his mouth, it meant it was possible. It should be available. So I was very hopeful and I went ahead, on and on and on. But to my dismay and disappointment, I could see nothing on either side except these green vegetables and lemons. So I went deep into the market. When I almost came to the end, the other side was non-vegetarian market. The fish and the smell, it was repulsive to me, so I wouldn't go anywhere near that. But that day I could not help because I was looking for a mango and all I could think of was Bhagwan and the mango. Everything else went out. And finally, just where the market started, on this side completely filled with fish, just the last one, there was one lady seated, a leaf in front of her, and then she was selling some vegetables. And then there was one mango, just one mango. And I don't know how I could see that at all. I mean, there were small heaps of other vegetables. And somehow, because of my running here and there, and my mind was focused on mango, I could see this somehow by His grace, and immediately rushed excitedly and asked her. She said, "Oh, for that Visiri Panka Baba, you have come. I know I have seen you there so many times. You want it for Panka Baba." She was very happy that her mango was being sold for the sake of Panka Baba. And so she gave it to me happily. And then I pressed the money into her hand and then ran almost all my way because it was getting late and Bhagwan would become restless. He could not afford waste of time because he said Father's work was heavy. He had no time even to bathe or eat sometimes. In fact, the inside of Sannidhi Street house sometimes looked like the dumping ground. And he would say, "Oh, it's an ocean. How could this beggar search for anything at all here?" And then he would say, "Oh, this beggar cannot put things in order. He has no time." So he had no time. He could not afford to wait for me. And he had told me that every moment his Father's work was getting done through him. So I ran, and panting for breath, I entered and promptly placed the mango in front of him. Bhagwan was happy to see the mango, though it looked very green and unripe. So he took it in his hand. "Oh, you managed to find one?" "Yes, by your grace." "Okay, you go and sit." And then he took it in his hand, and then he looked at it. He scrutinized it from this side, that side, rolled it a few times. There was a smile on his lips. It was this smile that I was waiting, hoping all the time for, because this smile was my Brahmananda, the final bliss. I sought no other Ananda except this approval, the smile of approval on his face. He was happy and satisfied. What more do we want in life? We lived only for that. So when I saw him smile, it made my day, and my life's purpose was fulfilled. I felt very happy. And then just before I left, he called me with one finger and dropped it into my hand and said, "Devaki, you make chutney of this and bring it for this beggar." So I understood it was unripe. In any case, he was happy with it, so I was happy with it too. And then in the afternoon, I made some chapatis for him, fluffy chapatis with mango chutney. And I was praying all the time that it should be tasty and that he should be able to take it. It should not become a punishment for him. And with the prayer, I entered and then prostrated before him and then kept it. He gave a beaming smile. "Oh, you have brought mango chutney." And then he took the coconut shell, put the chapatis there and the chutney. He ate it with relish, or so it seemed to me. So this is one thing, because for me, he was giving me test after test after test, many, many of them. He would test my resourcefulness, he would test my intelligence, he would test my intent behind my actions. He would see how efficiently I would be able to do a thing, so many things. Another time again, he called me, there were many people again, and then he said, he gave me 2 rupees from his pocket and said, Devaki, go and buy something which this beggar can take. He did not say anything, mango, nothing was specified. Just 2 rupees. Now it was a great responsibility with me. And then I started to pray, chant his name, desperately went out. Now what to buy? That he could eat. And then I looked here and there for 2 rupees, something that he would take, and sometimes he would share it with people around also, in which case there should be something at least left for him. So the first thing that I saw was the juice of the grass. But I thought, okay, he had had enough of it in his wandering days, when he had nothing at all to eat. I believe sometimes he would pull out the grass from the ground and then grind it with 2 stones and make a ball and eat it to appease his hunger. Because sometimes 2 or 3 days he wouldn't get anything at all to eat or drink. So my eyes filled up. When I thought of it, I told myself, okay, this would be the last item. He had had enough of this before. And then I was looking for a ripe mango again because he liked it so much. But then, unfortunately, nowhere could I see it. And then I went up to the end of the market like before, but I could not buy anything that would satisfy him. That's what I felt. And then again I ran all the way back, desperately again chanting his name and praying. And suddenly the thought of bread came to me. And then I knew it was 1 loaf, could be cut into slices. If he wanted, he could eat it himself. Or if he wanted to distribute, there would still be some pieces left for him. Either way, it would be ideal. And the bread wouldn't be distasteful. So I thought, okay, this would be ideal. But then the next fear was, only 2 rupees. Suppose he said something more than 2 rupees, I could not buy it. What would I do? Anyway, I thought I would take a chance and rush to a shop very near his house. Just behind that chariot manda. And the bakery was open to my delight. And then I wanted a loaf of bread. Immediately packed one. And then with a fluttering heart, I asked him, how much was that? He said, 2 rupees. You can imagine, I almost jumped in joy. He made my heaven. Immediately I rushed back to Sannidhi Street house, somewhat panting for breath. And then inside, I kept it before him and looked up at him. And my God, there was a beautiful, bewitching smile on his face. And that was all I wanted. That was my nirvana, the state of bliss. And then he slowly opened it and he saw the slices, because I asked the bakery man to slice and put it. So immediately he started to distribute, and finally 3 slices were left. He looked at me, wouldn't give me anything. He ate up the whole 3 himself. And I was happy because I wanted him to eat. There was only 3. My regret was there were only 3, and I was happy he ate up the whole thing. But while he was distributing those slices, the slices were cut, but they were all stuck together on one corner, and therefore, while snatching it from that, few pieces had dropped inside and outside. So after eating of the 3 slices, there were few pieces of bread in that polythene bag, and few had dropped down. He gave it to me, immediately called me, and with a smile, "This beggar has eaten up everything, not left anything for Devaki. Only this is there." I said, "Okay, this is my fortune." I was so happy. I took it from him, and then I asked him if I could pick up those pieces on the floor also. He readily said yes. And again, that was my sumptuous meal that day. When I looked at those pieces and I picked them up, the thought came to me, the English expression, the crumbs from the master's table. Literally, I was picking up the crumbs from the master's hands, and that is how the title came to my mind, which I used for some of my articles. The Bhiksha from the Divine Bhikshu, the crumbs from the master's table. You see, it is a very simple action of going to a shop, buying something for him. But it was not so simple for many of us who served him. So many things were involved, so many subtleties involved. So, when I described every detail of this, you will know that it was not a very simple action of going and buying something for Bhagwan. It was much more than that, for me and for him also. Now, why I am describing these things? Because they give a glimpse of his spiritual ministry in those days. Not only these pieces from his hand, whatever he said, his teachings are also his Uchishta, the leftover of his experiences. They had also come out from his mouth. And those teachings we must take up, eat them up, meaning we have to practice and practice those teachings until we are able to digest them and assimilate them. This assimilation of his teachings, the food that came from his hand became symbolic of the assimilation of the teachings that came from him. So today, we still have the teachings from his mouth. That anybody could still pick up and practice and make it their own. As his prasad, every teaching is prasad from his hand. Every teaching is his leftover. It's come from his mouth, like food. This emperor of the cosmos, for all his cosmic work, was seated on a very simple mat, which was dusty because there was nobody to sweep the room, nor would he let them. It's all by his own will. And he was wearing dirty clothes, which must have been white once upon a time, turned brown, and then from brown to black. I remember a writer, a famous writer who had come there, a lady writer had come there once when I happened to be there. I remember a piece of conversation between the two of them. He was saying, "Why would you come like this, rushing to have darshan of this beggar, this dirty beggar, dirty sinner? What made you come here to this beggar? What has he to give you? This beggar has nothing to give you. This beggar has only dirt. Just see how dirty this beggar is." Immediately, pat came the reply from the writer. She said, "Swami, give me a little of your dirt. That would be my fortune. I want just a little of your dirt." And then Bhagwan went into thunderous laughter. He laughed and laughed and laughed for 5 minutes, 5 full minutes. And I felt the whole world laughed with him. The flowers blossomed and the waves rose high in the ocean. And the birds had that extra flutterings, excited. Everything in nature seemed to be very happy and laughing. The laughter of happiness with him. Why? Because as a cosmic man has become one with the entire cosmos, the entire creation. There's a very beautiful story about Shuka Muni. Shukadev, the son of Vyasa. Once he was running, and his father was running after him, calling out, "Hey Shuka, hey Shuka." And I believe on the way every tree, every plant, every bird, everything in nature responded to the name Shuka because he was one with them. The tree thought it was being called by father. The bird turned and looked, thinking that it was being called. Why? The Shuka, at the age of 16, was one with the entire creation. The creation identified itself with him. Such is the beauty of the divinity of these great masters. And this Bhagwan is here right in front of us, with the same smile on his lips and hand raised in benediction. And there's a constant flow of grace for all who choose to seek it. Let us submit our today's prayers at his feet, seeking his immediate divine intervention to uproot the panic from the hearts of people, to arrest the spread of the disease,